Well, hi. The show is out. Jewish Instagram is losing its mind, so here we are. I have a lot to say, so pull this video up on a screen bigger than your phone, settle in with a cup of tea, because we are getting into it. The show I'm talking about is My Unorthodox Life, which just dropped on Netflix this past week. It is about Julia Hart, who left her ultra-Orthodox Jewish community to live a secular life and pursue a career in fashion. It also features her family members who are all at different levels of religious observance, including her ex-husband, Yosef, who I personally think is the hero of the show, but more on that later. First and foremost, I understand why the Jewish community gets defensive and nervous about any portrayal of Orthodox Judaism in mainstream media. It always makes me uneasy too, because let's be real for a second. We are complicated. Even if everything said and depicted on the show was 100% accurate to a T, a show like this doesn't allow for the context and nuance and asterisks and footnotes and commentary that is Judaism. Because to be honest, there's the religion, and then within the religion there are the different sects, and within the different sects there are different communities, and then in each community there's different schools and synagogues and families and individuals, and none of us agree on anything. So when I see people complaining online that this show is not an accurate depiction of Judaism, I'm like, what does that even mean? Because what would be an accurate depiction from your point of view wouldn't be an accurate depiction from mine. And I think that that just needs to be a baseline understanding that we agree upon before we even get into this conversation. So take a deep breath, relax your shoulders down from your neck, and let's all just calm down for a minute. When I first started seeing backlash online, my initial response was, well, this is just one woman sharing her personal perspective and experience in leaving her community. And if you are someone who is happy in your orthodoxy or ultra-orthodoxy, then this narrative just isn't about you. As someone who was raised Orthodox and is now living a more secular life myself, I appreciate the representation. I appreciated watching people on my TV have discussions and struggles that I've had, but are so unique and niche that I've never seen them talked about this way before. Especially because, like I said, the different family members are all at different levels of observance. So that's representation for a lot of different kinds of Jews. Now, I don't agree with everything that's said on the show. Some of it was kind of uncomfortable to watch, but it focuses on the perspective of one individual, and she's entitled to her own feelings and views. Now, should those views be being shared as widely as they are? I'll address that. But first, it's important to discuss the caveat that's emerged online that perhaps Julia's depiction of her personal experiences isn't even accurate or factual to her own experiences. As more people are starting to watch the show, people who knew Julia personally before she left the community are starting to come forward and poke holes in her story. The devil works hard, but Allison Josephs at Jew in the City works harder. She's already written 2 blog posts about the show, and I expect there's more to come. She dug up an article about Miriam Hart, Julia's daughter, and possibly my favorite character on the show, being a sports star within the same Orthodox community that she alleges did not allow girls to play sports. According to the article, Miriam was on teams for cross country, JV soccer, and JV basketball at the Orthodox high school that she attended. The blog posts also cite personal references who say that Julia did not come from the kind of community that she describes on the show, explaining that Julia's ex-husband is an Ivy League grad and the CEO of a tech company, that Julia held leadership roles within the community, that Julia claims she wasn't allowed to read magazines, but the students at the high school where she taught say that she regularly carried around Vogue. I find these arguments to be problematic because do we really need to dissect and refute someone's claims that they were unhappy under a certain set of circumstances? If Julia or Miriam were unhappy with the lifestyle they were living and wanted to make a change, gesund to hate. If they're saying they felt oppressed, who am I to say that they weren't? Or, yeah, they were, but not really that badly. And Judaism and religion aren't stagnant. It's very fluid, and it's possible that the family experienced different chapters where they lived in different communities with varying levels of restriction. Now, do I personally believe that Julia's depiction of the community she came from was sensationalized or exaggerated for the show? Yes, I do. But I also believe her when she says that she was suicidal before leaving the community, so I don't think that it matters what factors got her there. She needed to make whatever changes she needed to make to get out of that dark place. But that little brown poodle did raise my eyebrows. During filming, Julia took a camera crew to visit her old community and go to her ex-husband's house. And now as I'm watching, before I've met the ex-husband, I was pretty surprised that he would allow a camera crew to come into his home for some Netflix show. And if you're familiar with the kind of sects of ultra-Orthodox Judaism that Julia describes on the show, there's no way you weren't at least a little caught off guard when that little brown dog came running to the door. This may be a gross generalization, but in true fundamentalist sects, yes, they exist in every religion, not just Judaism, but in those kind of sects, dogs pose an issue with Shabbat, so it would be very unusual to see a dog in that kind of home. Also, Julia goes into a kosher market showing lots of skin and isn't asked to leave, which would probably happen in a more restrictive community. Also, the show is allowed to film at restaurants in the community and also features several of her young son's friends from the community whose parents are open-minded enough to let their kids be on TV. She also mentioned something about women not being allowed to drive. As far as I know, the women in Muncie drive. But lean in. Listen close for a second. Reality TV is not National Geographic. Shows like this are produced. It's not like a camera crew just follows these people around and hopes something interesting happens. They have a shooting schedule. They have storylines. Everyone gets hair and makeup done. Everyone gets mic'd up. They say, okay, on Tuesday, we're going to shoot scenes of all the kids pitching their business ideas to Julia so we can put it together for a montage. You think this just happens? Mm-hmm. Or like when Batsheva, another one of Julia's daughters, loses a $10,000 Instagram deal and doesn't flip out. No tears. This isn't shade. I follow her on Instagram. I like all her posts, send her love in the DMs all the time. But she does strike me as a crier. No, I could be wrong. And it's not about how wealthy these people are. 10 grand is 10 grand. That's a Rolex. And I don't care if you already have 7 Rolexes, one for each day of the week. This could have been your 8th. The one you save for special occasions, like meeting the queen or going to space or whatever the fabulously wealthy consider to be a special occasion. Anyway, the bottom line is, if Julia Hart came from an Orthodox community that is not as restrictive as she's making it seem, and the producers were like, well, we need to sensationalize this a bit to make it more shocking and fascinating, then that's these people doing their job. I don't want to watch a TV show with no tension or conflict, but this sensationalized depiction brings us to the main issue that many Jewish people are having with the show. The argument is that it is careless and irresponsible to share this limited and negative depiction of Judaism in such a mainstream way. I've seen people online call the show disgusting and dangerous. So let's break up this part of the conversation into those two categories, disgusting and dangerous. Do I think the show is disgusting? No. I don't. I enjoyed it overall, and I'm rooting for season 2, which I think there will be just based on how Netflix titled the episodes. But I do understand how someone from the Orthodox community hears some of the things that come out of Julia's mouth and feel personally attacked, disrespected, and disgusted. On more than one occasion, Julia calls religious beliefs ludicrous, and she seems to pressure everyone around her to adopt her new way of thinking and behaving. One of the storylines that people are finding particularly problematic is where Julia tries to help another young woman leave the Orthodox community. She gives this woman a makeover and jeans because Julia is obsessed with women wearing pants pretty proportionately to how the community she left is obsessed with women not wearing pants. Anyway, an alternate view on her involvement with this young woman is shared by Batsheva and her husband when they discuss Julia's actions and how uneasy and uncomfortable it makes them feel. Now, Julia is an EP on the show, and after getting to know her a bit, I would say she definitely negotiated Final Cut privileges, which means she allowed this criticism and alternate viewpoint to be kept in the show. Julia can have her own opinions, but the show depicts a lot of different views. So does the show have an agenda? Maybe, but all the different family members pipe in on every issue with alternate viewpoints, and that all made the cut. My favorite scene of the whole show is when Julia's ex-husband Yosef is sitting down with their young son and having a conversation about talking to girls. And he says that women are people with something to offer, her, and he has to respect the girls in his class, and it's okay to be friendly with them. And then Yosef goes on to say, and this is a direct quote, "There's all sorts of Orthodox Jews out there. They share a tradition of life. Some people start out a little more strict, then they get a little less strict. Some people who are less strict become more strict. And there's a lot of leeway in between. Where you are in your life, in your path, you as a person have to choose what that path is." And that, my friends, is probably the least problematic depiction of Judaism that I have ever seen in any mainstream media. So if you think that the show is disgusting, you might be zeroing in on the opinions and behaviors of one person that you don't agree with, but not the show overall. Lastly, let's address the claim that this show is dangerous in terms of fueling anti-Semitism. Yes, we are living in very frightening times for our tribe globally. Anti-Semitism is on the rise. We're all on edge, hyper aware of what anybody is saying about Jews. But you know what? The people who want to hate Jews will do so with or without this show. But to the complete contrary, I actually think that this show is a good thing for Jewish image. We don't need a Jewish PSA to be like, Jews are charitable and Jews are kind and Jews are perfect. The PSA that we need is that Jews are people. I have a friend who was in Ireland and he was asked if he has horns, presumably by someone who's never met a Jew that they know of. But you shouldn't need to meet a Jew or have direct exposure to Jews to understand that we're just people. When you bring the humanity back into a social issue, that's where the change really happens. If people view Jews as relatable human beings instead of some like mysterious abstract idea, that would make a huge difference. The family in this show, with their fun, lovable, relatable characters, is doing a public service. If you've never met a Jew, but you see yourself or your family in this quirky, flawed family, then that's so positive for how people feel emotionally about Jews. Anyway, that's all I have for you. If you've watched this far, thank you. I obviously don't speak for anyone but myself, so feel free to sound off in the comments. I would genuinely like to hear what you have to say. Orthodox, modern, reform, religiously Jewish, ethnically Jewish, not Jewish at all. Whatever you are lovely, and thank you for watching.